Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. You are watching the Paris Fintech Forum Communities video interview series. I'm Elliott Gotkine, and today I'm joined by the CEO of bpifrance, Nicolas Dufourcq. Great to have you with us.
Hello, Elliott.
Okay, so before we get going, we're going to learn a little bit more about bpifrance. So, Nicolas, bpifrance, I think, has officially been around for almost a decade, even if its roots stretch back far longer. Tell us more about the company and its mission.
So the mission of the company is to accompany entrepreneurs from the pre-seed stage to massive multinational listed companies. We are managing basically 175 billion euros through our different business lines. We're a banker, so we are granting loans, approximately 15 billion per year. We're an equity investor, 5 billion per year. We are an innovation financer, 6 billion per year. And we are also an export credit agency guaranteeing the exports of France. And this represents approximately, depends on the years, between 15 and 20 billion per year. So that, in a nutshell, this is what we do.
And I assume that unlike many of the fintechs that you help and that you invest in, BPI is very profitable.
BPI is very profitable. Yeah, last year, 2021, we posted 1.8 billion euros of net result. And a lot of it came from our equity business, of course, direct investments, very profitable, but also funds of funds. We're a major funds of funds investor, notably in the fintech landscape. We are investors in funds like, everybody would know them, like Blackfin, which is a famous brand in France. We have invested in the US also in funds like Valar. We are in Balderton. We are in a French fintech fund called the New Alpha Fintech. We are in crypto massively. We have decided to invest in 8 crypto funds, 8. 2 outside of France and 6 in France. And out of the 2 outside of France, we have White Star. And then most of the venture capital funds in France, which are generalists, like Idinvest, Partech, Ventech, Alven, Singular, and so forth, they would also invest in fintech. So overall, through our innovation financing schemes, be it subsidies, soft loans, innovation loans, or equity, direct and indirect, we have our fingerprints is probably 500 French fintechs.
Wow. Okay, well, we'll come back to the crypto stuff a little bit later, perhaps. But of course, in the broader economic environment, we see rising interest rates. And rising interest rates, so long as they don't precipitate a recession, are often seen as positive for banks as they help with higher interest rate margins. Are these good times for BPI, or are you preparing for what JP Morgan's Jamie Dimon describes as an incoming economic hurricane?
Right. I had that conversation a couple of weeks ago with Jamie. Of course, there is the US dimension, which is not exactly at par with what we think we're going to live through in Europe, provided we have a little bit of gas this next winter, of course. But overall, what we see as far as bpifrance is concerned is whatever happens, we are going to have a role and a mandate which will be counter-cyclical. So when there is the beginning of a recession, a lot of people are requesting bpifrance to bridge the gap, I would say, and take a little bit more risks and cover for the necessities of the private banks. So we guarantee them, of course, but something which is extremely important for you to know is that we have, through the past 4 years, I would say, with a huge acceleration with the COVID crisis, built an organization, a scheme, and processes of a major French fintech, because we are poised in 2022 to grant 360 degrees digital loans to very small companies in a sizable proportion. We are going to funnel to them 30,000 loans. So probably have we become in those past 4 years through our platforms and through the major tokenization of the credit market in France, one of the biggest French fintech for SMEs. I'm talking of fintechs which are specialized on loans. So this is the beginning of an adventure for us, which is going to be long term. So if there is a crisis, a recession in France next year and the year after, let's say 2023, 2024, difficult moments, you will see bpifrance bridging the gap for SMEs through those fintech platforms.
Okay, so we've heard about bpifrance. Let's now get to know Nikolas a little bit better. So, Nicolas, you've been at the heart of French industry and I think politics as well all your career. And yet you've also got a musical connection as well, I understand. I believe your wife is a piano teacher, your grandfather was a musicologist and an organist, and you collect violins. We see many fintech founders collecting guitars, but never violins. Perhaps in another life you might have been a musician?
Well, you said it all. No, I don't regret not having had another life. I'm very happy with mine. But truly, it's always a major pleasure for me to buy a beautiful violin on the markets and to lend it free of charge to musicians who can't afford those kinds of instruments, because then after you can go to major halls, La Philharmonie de Paris, and you listen to your instrument and to your musician who has in the meantime, of course, become one of your best friends. So I'm going to continue to do that.
Well, that must be incredibly rewarding to see that. And I read that you're also an ardent mountain climber and desert trekker. Can you share with us some of your greatest exploits, and perhaps tell us if this is just for fun, or maybe it helps you with running bpifrance?
No, there are no exploits at all. It's just a way of life. My last trip was 3 months ago, 150 kilometers in the Mauritanian desert, and that was absolutely extraordinary. The quality of course of solitude and silence, just for 1 week. It's so easy to do. I would recommend all the possible listeners of today to do that. You take your plane at Orly, and just 4 hours after you're in the desert, you take your camel. And after 1 week, you're somebody else. You're just somebody else, totally purified of all the toxins that you can have accumulated in the winter. So yes, do it. It's easy.
It's easy. You're doing it on top of a camel. You're not doing this. I know there's like a kind of a marathon or a crazy race that goes through the desert.
The camel is only there. The camel is only there to take your luggage. You really walk. No, you're not on the camel.
Okay, real desert trekking. Does it give you more perspective when you have this silence and solitude? There's a lot of crises and things to be dealing with right now, which are perhaps pretty stressful. Does the solitude, is it some kind of form of meditation or?
No, what it tells you, of course, is that half of the life, of course, is about the body. And even if when you have duties of command, because you're the leader, you're the CEO, or you have an important position and so forth, a lot of your intelligence comes from the body. So you'd better take care of it, of course. When you do a speech on stage, nobody really listens to what you say. It's just an action, and people look at you as an actor. You need to have completely liberated your body from any inhibition, I would say, and understand that most of the echo of what you have to say to people, the aura, I would say, and the charisma comes from the body. And therefore, this is something that inevitably you recognize when you're just walking 150 kilometers in the desert.
Okay. And when you're not trekking in the desert or running the bank, I think you recently wrote a book on the deindustrialization of France and the importance of industry. Is this a personal passion of yours? Is it mainly like a political vision that you have for France?
Yes, you could say that, but mostly it is the consideration I have of my duty to give a voice to people who most often are not being listened to, entrepreneurs. And notably, of course, a lot of tech entrepreneurs are heroes now. So they're on stage, they make the covers. I don't have any worries for them. But SMEs entrepreneurs, mature business entrepreneurs, industrial entrepreneurs in regions, in all sorts of verticals like textile, chemistry, metal, steel, and so forth, automobile, aeronautics, and so forth. Nobody talks about them. Huh? And I wanted to give them a voice. I really wanted to have everybody recognize the sort of other side of entrepreneurial heroism that we have in front of us, and that nobody knows. And therefore, I interviewed 47 of them, asking them to tell me the reality of their lives during the horrible years of disindustrialization of France at the beginning of the years 2000. This is what I did, basically. And also because I wanted to listen to them before I can do the grand narrative of what happened. Because, you know, when you live in Paris or in New York or in London and so forth, you are sort of overwhelmed by vociferous people who tend to have the truth and tell you that, of course, the culprit is Mr. X or Mrs. Y, trade unions, or this law, or this politician, or when you listen to entrepreneurs, of course, there is not one culprit. It is holistic. And what I describe in my book is that the disindustrialization of France, but also of UK, and but also of the US, is the consequence of a collective choice of those three societies. And only those three, because there was no disindustrialization of Germany, of Sweden, of Denmark, of Holland, even not in northern Italy, and less so in Spain. It was really hard in France, Britain, and the US for exactly the same reasons. That is what I wanted to describe. The global responsibility of all the constituents of our societies. The medias, the trade unions, the politicians, the families, the education, the entrepreneurs themselves, blah, blah, blah. Otherwise, it's impossible to destroy an industry. If you want to destroy your industry, you'd better have a complete solidarity of all the constituencies of a society. And the consequence of that reality is that if you want to rebuild your industry, it's the same. You'd better convince everybody to be around the table and decide collectively that, yes, we are going to do what is necessary to rebuild. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Okay. So I'm sure we could talk more about that, but need to move on to the next section because a key part of this interview is to get your take on the future of finance. But first, we're going to take a very quick break, after which we're going to continue our conversation with bpifrance CEO Nicolas Dufourcq. Welcome back, and don't forget, if you're not already a full member of our community, everything you need to join can be found at www.parisfintechforum.com. Okay, now Nicolas, let's talk about the future of finance. So, Nicolas, you've been at the heart of French industry through the global financial crisis, the Eurozone crisis, the pandemic, and now a possible recession. How bad do you expect things to get for the French, European, global economy?
Of course, it's extremely difficult to say, and I don't want to be assertive as Jamie was recently, because he was really verbalizing his vision of a downturn of the stock markets by another minus 20%. And what is clear is that if there is a total cut of Russian gas next year, you're going to have in Germany a recession which is going to be probably as hard as what we experienced during the COVID, which is -4 to -10, even -12% of GDP. Because of the dependence on Russian gas. In France, it'll be also a major impact. So what you can think, I mean, it's just a personal thought and an anticipation of common sense, is that if it's the case, if we are in that kind of magnitude for 2023 and the beginning of 2024, the states will intervene, and the states will massively intervene like they did before, and therefore. It'll be costly for the public finances, that's for sure. It's going to be another crisis to absorb, and it'll make it even more difficult afterwards to, integrate all that and assimilate all that in the economies. But at the same time, as usual, after a crisis, there will be a massive rebound and a catapult. This is what I would see. Now, if we have Russian gas in the winter, in the proportions that we have today, then it's going to be more in Europe, I would say, of a slowdown than a sort of heartbreaking situation a la Jamie Dimon. And this we will absolutely be able to manage. Today, what I can tell you in any case is that bpifrance is overwhelmed by new projects of startups, of deep tech leaders, but also of mature industry, SME, CEOs in all the regions of France and so forth. I mean, the deal flow is unbelievable. I have never seen that in the past 10 years.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about this because, we know entrepreneurs were flying high, at least tech ones were flying high until earlier this year. Now we see valuations tumbling, growth slowing, and cash conservation becoming paramount. So is now the best of times or the worst of times to be an entrepreneur?
Well, it's one of the best of times to be an investor, that's for sure, if you want to buy the dip. So if it's good for investors, it should be good for entrepreneurs. Now, for entrepreneurs who are burning a lot of cash and are slow to adjust, it's going to be tough. But legitimately so, I would say. I mean, at the end of the day, there is something which is called the discipline of result, which is a good rule. So I'm not really worried by the consequences of what's happening today. I mean, it would be terrible if exceptional entrepreneurs with exceptional technologies able to transform the world would go bust. And I don't think it's going to happen. There'll be, it's going to be Darwinian. What's going to go bust is probably what is a little bit on the side of mediocrity. The good values, the good entrepreneurs, and so, I mean, there is so much money on the market. The dry powder in Paris is huge. And the French startups have raised, just in H1, 8 billion. 8 billion euros in H1 2022, including Ukraine and the crisis that we've lived through. And I'm talking only about tech. The rest of the economy is also very, very well financed. The problem is more human capital, talents, the great dismissal, the quantity of work on the market, and the attractivity of many, many verticals of the economy to the youth. That's what is really the problem of today.
Of course, one of the crises, which I guess we don't talk about as much today, but was the main thing we were talking about a few years ago, was Brexit. Did Brexit help boost France's position or help put France on the global innovation map? Because back in the day, it wasn't necessarily seen as being this kind of hub of or hotbed of innovation that perhaps it is today. Did Brexit help?
Yes, it did, to be honest. I'm sorry for my British colleagues and friends. I mean, London was paramount in inventing a path towards becoming a tech hub for the world. And then we followed the example, and I think we succeeded. It's been a 10 years adventure. It was not easy. We created the French Tech. We created, practically ex nihilo the ecosystem of financing and startups and funds and so forth, and now it has become an incredible snowball. It's massive, and it's growing at such a pace that we are going to miss the quantity of capital which is necessary when all those companies will be valued what they deserve to be valued, which is a couple of billions, notably when they will be listed on Euronext. So London is still number one. And so Brexit has not imperished that. The deep tech in Great Britain is still very, very, very good. But Paris is a good second. I mean, France is a good second. It's very distributed around the French territories. I mean, you have a lot of things happening in Strasbourg, in Marseille, in Bordeaux, in all the French cities. This is a very positive reality, and we are just beginning the deep tech revolution of France. The deal flow of deep tech startups which are going to build factories produce the complex objects that they have invented is only starting to reveal its potential. So very, very, very good news at the end of the day. To finish my answer to your question, the Brexit has changed one thing, I would say, in the mentality of part of the French people, which is that, during all the years 2000 and 2010, during 20 years, I would say, started with Tony Blair, basically, a little bit before. A lot of French people wanted to be British. And it's over. Now, the sort of dominance of the ideological model is over. And it had to happen. It was accelerated by the Brexit. It would have happened in any case. But now it's the case.
Okay. And just briefly, if you can, you mentioned you'd invested in a number of digital asset or crypto funds. Any regrets about that, or did you get in kind of after everything had collapsed? No, we're very happy to have been lucky enough to invest 85% of what we've invested in crypto after the bust. So it's extremely recent. I mean, there was a curve like that, and we made a decision in January to start to document, all those funds in which we would invest, and then the time to do the due diligences of the funds and to start to cash out was such that we have cashed out after the bust. So I think we're going to make very good business. Okay, lovely. Well, look, it's time now, Nikolas, for our round of rapid fire questions. Are you ready? Okay, so look, it's 90 seconds. I'm just going to get the timer on my watch, on my phone even. And just one-word answers is ideal. And I'm going to start my stopwatch now. So, from your perspective, what fintech segment besides yours has the biggest potential over the next 5 years?
Probably everything around the tokenization of finance.
What is the biggest pain point in your everyday financial life that you would like to see resolved?
Bureaucracy.
Are we at the beginning, middle, or end of the fintech wave?
Oh, only at the beginning, of course.
Do you have a metaverse strategy?
Yes, of course. We did our first metaverse event online 2 weeks ago on 2 metaverses at the same time.
Have EU and US regulations kept pace with the new possibilities and behaviors in the financial industry?
I think globally so. I mean, the recent MiCA regulation for Europe is a good news.
Okay, just one word answers, Nicolas, otherwise we won't get through them all. How would you describe NFTs? A scam, B, an interesting concept, or C, a part of the future that we don't want to miss out on?
Just part of life. I would not overemphasize it.
Have you ever invested in crypto? I guess you've answered that one already.
bpifrance, yes, a lot.
And yourself personally?
I have my ledger box, but I have never found the time to open it.
Okay. Are physical points of sales part of the future of finance?
Of course, and we're very happy to be from bpifrance, a fintech with 55 physical branches.
Okay, we are out of time. I had a few more questions there, but we've run out of time for our rapid fire round. So thank you, and we've run out of time for the whole interview. So I just want to thank you, bpifrance CEO Nicolas Dufourcq, for joining me today and for that fascinating conversation.
Thank you.
For everyone watching, we will be back again next week with another big name from the world of finance and technology. We do hope you'll be able to join us again then. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe to the Paris Fintech Forum YouTube channel and to follow us on Twitter at Paris Fin Forum. Hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.